ago, I made the decision to really go to get more listings than work with buyers. Everybody has different comfort levels. Many people are more comfortable working with buyers. It's a rewarding place to work with working with buyers. You become the hero when you get them the right house, and um, you win the bid if there's multiple bids and all of that. So that's a real fun way to be in real estate. Just after the many years of running around with people and just really honestly, I just was getting tired. And I decided about 5 or 6 years ago to really start going to be more listing driven. A couple of different reasons for that, not just because I was tired, but the other thing was I started to see a little bit of a shift in the market kind of before it happened, just by watching different current trends. I've been around where there were recessions, close to depression. I would say we're in a depression right now, even though the news doesn't want to call it that. It really, technically, it is. A recession is 3 consecutive months of a spiral down, and a depression is anything over that. So we actually totally are in a depression. That does not mean that our business is in a depression, because it's not. And I really caution you, if you're watching news and watch about the economy, just be careful about your own mindset, because it can really mess with you. If you don't pay as much attention to it, then you're just going to keep doing what you do, and you're going to be successful at it. As far as getting listings, you just have to get your head in the game. Where do these listings come from? A lot of mine come from referrals. Friends of mine that tell me that somebody's going to be listing their home. Many of them are past clients. When COVID first broke out and we had to be staying at home, I was making phone calls not to ask about real estate, but just to check on people. How are you doing? How's your family doing? Are you going crazy? Or, and is there anything that I can do for you? And I would tell them, I can't go out. I'm in a very compromised situation. My husband had just gone through surgery. He's diabetic. So I had to be careful. I was not going to go out and be around people. But what can I do for you? I can find you resources. I have a friend of mine that is literally going to the grocery store for people. Can we do that for you and put the groceries on your front porch? Whatever. And most of the time, no, we're fine. But almost always the conversation would come back to real estate. Well, how's your business doing, Becky? It's fantastic. You all would really be surprised. I've been surprised myself. And I tell them, sometimes I'll get in a thinking, we're going through this. And then I'll look on my boards, and I'm just always so grateful. And I always tell them that I'm so grateful for what I have. And between you all and me, my listing year to date is 65% to buyers, and I have a buyer's agent. So really those listings, and when you have a listing, you have a sale, unless it is a doghouse and you have it overpriced. If you don't have it overpriced and it's okay looking, it's going to sell. And most of the time when you do have a listing, you're going to pick up at least one buyer, if not two. We really try to make it our goal to have 2 buyers picked up off of a listing. And you can also pick up sellers from your listings, because people watch. They watch what's going on in the neighborhood. They see how fast homes sell. Also, before COVID happened, a lot of times when we would do open house, I would cater open houses. I'm just talking about picking up, a tray of those pinwheel sandwiches or whatever, and some drinks, chips, making it a little party for the neighborhood. And that has won me. I did that like 2 times. 2 times is like 3 listings on each of those. So
You only do it for certain price brackets?
No, ma'am. The first one that I did was 110,000 off of MPRP 40258 off of Dixie Highway, and just decided that, number one, the person that was selling the house was an investor. I felt like they were going to probably do a few more flips and list with us. Turned out she didn't enjoy what she did. She actually decided that wasn't the avenue that she wanted to go to make a living. However, we did get 3 listings off of it. So, 3 at 110, 120, that's 360,000. I'll take that anytime for buying a $12 tray of sandwiches. So, and that's basically what it was, and some chips and sandwiches. I don't take colored drink sodas into people's homes. I always just take bottled water. I'm just always afraid that that one little kid that's going to come in that open house is going to spill, Coca-Cola on their white rug and and then I'll be replacing their carpet. So I don't do that. So really getting your head in the game about listings. Listings can come from places you don't even know. Yesterday, I received a phone call, random, and this lady said, my name is Donna, and you called me. You are a real estate agent, aren't you? And I said, yes, because I just answered the phone. Hello, this is Becky, which usually I don't do that, but I did. And she said, you're a real estate agent, right? And I said, yes, I am. And she said, well, you called me, and I have a house on Smyrna Road. And she said, we really are thinking about selling it. So here's how that went. As far as I'd never met this person before, I cold called her at some point. I don't even know when. I didn't even look her up in my database yet to even know. However, I'm going this afternoon to look at the house. So here's how that went. I said, tell me about the home. And she had a 270 exchange on her cell phone, which is usually down around Elizabethtown, Caney area. And I said, do you live here in Louisville? She said, no, I'm in Elizabethtown. I said, okay. She said, but my son is living in the house. And I said, okay. I said, tell me a little bit about the house. And she said, outside, it's really, really nice. She said, but we haven't gotten to the inside. She said, this house has been in our family since the 80s. And she said, and to be quite honest, it needs work. And I said, okay. I said, talk to me about that. What does that work look like to you? She goes, well, really, we haven't touched the inside. She said, the carpets are old, the kitchen's dated. And I said, well, talk to me about the floor plan a little bit. Because she did tell me up front, it's a farmhouse. So I'm thinking, okay, farmhouse could be anything, it could be
The white paint.
Exactly. It could be a 2-story, frame home. It could be a bungalow, whatever. So I said, tell me about it. She started explaining it to me that on this one floor you have this, and then on this other floor you have that. And I said, is it a tri-level? She said, oh, no, it's not tri-level. And I said, okay. So anyway, I started really talking more about condition at that point because she'd already told me, in her opinion, it was dated. So I told her, I said, a lot of times I can tell going into a computer evaluation and get you pull up numbers. I said, but it sounds like to me, I really need to look at your house before we discuss any numbers. I said, is that okay with you? And she said, yeah, we'll be here today. And I said, well, I'm already committed today. I said, however, I can come tomorrow afternoon or evening and take a look at it personally and then be able to go back and look at the numbers. And she said, Becky, I really like talking to you. She said, I used to be a realtor. Which then I was like, oh, I've been on my toes all this time and didn't even realize it. So
And she
anyway,
was a nice previous realtor.
yes, she was very sweet. She just said, I just know from my own experience that I wanted to tell you up front that it needed work, because, and really when somebody does that, I really suggest that you do go and look at the house because you could do a CMA and have numbers that are beyond. And I'm going to tell you, it's so hard to back down from numbers than to back in or, raise them up. I have gone on listing appointments where they have not told me all of the improvements, and I'll have my CMA with me and I'll look at them and say, honestly, I did not know that you built on a $50,000 4-season room. Now, I can't say that that's what's going to be in addition on the CMA, but let me go back and redo my numbers. Would that be okay with you? They almost always say, that's fine, because I'm coming from my heart and I'm being honest with them. I'm not trying to pull a number off the cuff of my sleeve. We are the expert. They expect us to do our job at an expert level and not just guess. And when people say to me after I've walked through, well, what do you think? What do you think? I'll say, I'll let you know after I look at the numbers, because I don't, even after this many years, and I'm usually pretty close on my numbers, but even after the experience I've had in the business, that's what tells me not to open my mouth when I don't know. So it's always better if you're asked a question, irregardless of what it is. If it's numbers or if it's about anything, you don't have the answer, be honest and say, that is really a fantastic question. Let me get back to you with the answer. So, that's just something that I've learned, and it does not make us look unprofessional. In fact, it's the opposite. It makes us look professional when we can say, that's a great question. Let me find out the answer. So That's just one thing.
And I don't
It,
want to disrupt you, Becky, but I just want to share when I started at KW, I showed one of Becky's listings. It was $750,000, and it was a scam. And so, I showed him this house. I was there for an hour, and then they ghosted me. And I talked to Becky, and Becky was like, pretty much the gist of, why are you wasting your time with people that you haven't really gotten to know, that you don't know are pre-approved? She was the first one that was like, no, your time is money, and if people are going to verbally beat you up, you can just walk away from that conversation. You don't need to deal with it. You only work with people that you know are legit and that are going to respect your time. And I think for real estate agents, it's so easy to feel like, well, I'm serving, I provide a service. I just don't have a life. I need to drop everything I can at any time to help anyone. And so to have the firmness of, this is my business, this is my time, and my time costs money. And if you're going to disrespect me, then I'm not going to make time for you, because there's other people that I can focus on. And I think, the reason I bring that up is because there's so many agents that, oh my gosh, I mean, the sellers are savage, and they're like, no, you can't come until you give me an idea what it's worth, or else I can talk to another agent. How much do you think it is? How much do you think I can get? How much do you think this costs? And it's so hard to sit on the other end of the phone and be like, no, I don't want to tell you because I don't know. And so can you kind of walk through a little bit, what is your mindset? And I don't know if you have, sellers that treat you like that anymore, because you're a lot more referral based now. But what goes through your mind when you have people that are really hardcore about knowing numbers before they give you the time?
well, I would ask them, I would say, what if I did the numbers for you and you have hardwood floors throughout your home and your neighbors all have carpet? Would you appreciate it if I came in with a number that is equal to what they put into their house? Yours might stand out for very different features, and we could maybe give you extra credit and have our numbers be sharper and on point because of extra things you put in your house. So it would be better for us to have an accurate number, be able to sell your house at a faster pace for more money if we hit the exact target that it needs to be listed at. And in order to do that, I need to see your home. That's how I would approach that. Now, Krista, on the flip side of that, I'm really good at CMAs, and that's another class Seamus is going to teach this week, which is, he's fantastic at them. Y'all
Mm-hmm.
will love that class. Um, but if it is a cookie cutter neighborhood, which we all know what that is, production builders, they build 5 different floor plans. They charge this much to put a fireplace in it, this much to put trim in it, blah, blah, blah. You can ask a few questions like, did you all do upgraded cabinets when you built your house? Did you put in crown molding? What kind of flooring do you have? You can have those numbers in advance and just say, we'll go over those numbers when I get there. I never give a number over the phone, ever, ever, because you could have the number and have it exact, and you could walk in and it smells like a litter box, and you can't get past that. So you really need to physically go in. I may have that CMA with me, on those cookie cutter projects. I'm brutally honest with people too. I will ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, how direct can I be with you on the condition or about your house? Because now this isn't your home, this is an asset that you're selling, it's a product. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how direct can I be? Most of the time they say, just give it to me. And I do. I will tell them, when I walked in this house, I smelled cat. We go nose blind to smells. And, I'm not trying to be offensive to you, but this is an issue that we're going to have to overcome, because that's what buyers are going to smell as soon as they walk in your house. If there's stains all over the floor, I'm going to say, tell me about these stains. Like, were they pet stains that you no longer have a pet? Are these from your teenagers? Is this from your little ones? Whatever. If they are still living in the house, it's not likely that if they replace that floor, it's going to stay looking fresh until the end of closing. But now I will tell them, this has to be cleaned. Clean it as well as you can, professionally get it cleaned, get the spots removed, try to keep it as traffic friendly as possible. And they'll say, well, we'll just give an allowance. Allowances are not allowed anymore, so they have to know that. And I'll say, you know, we can't really give an allowance. However, what we can do is be willing to pay somebody's closing costs so they can keep cash in their pocket to be able to replace this. So, and then I talk to them about the legalities of that. But I think on that 1 to 10, you know, asking, I only one time had somebody say, you're going to hurt my feelings if you're too direct. I say, okay, so maybe a 5. I said, I'll tone myself back a little bit. And I did. And their house was lovely. It really didn't, I didn't have much critique on it. There was only a couple little things like that we, in our own house we live in, and she didn't even notice, you know, there's a little crack in settlement or whatever. And you'll say, you know, this is an easy fix. Um, tiny little cracks, just as a pointer for you guys, you can actually use toothpaste, the old-fashioned white toothpaste, fill that in and paint it. And those little cracks, they don't have to worry about fixing the texture and all that kind of stuff. So just a little tip for the being on here.
And little nail holes too. Little tiny
Sorry.
little nail holes. Like if you had something hanging on the wall, you can fill it in with white toothpaste and then just paint over it, and it works the same way.
Yes, exactly. So you already know some of these tricks. Good for you. I will say this, most people, especially now, we don't get mail from friends. I'm talking about snail mail. It just is not a form of communication much anymore. However, if you have a really fantastic conversation with somebody, whether you've made the appointment or not, send them a note. Send them a note card. I keep note cards in my car. If I get stuck in traffic, I will write them out. I'll just say something like, and I'll leave the name blank sometime if I'm writing these, because I'll have them for in advance. I'll say, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I so enjoyed talking to you. I hope that we will be able to meet very soon in the future. Again, thank you for your time. Let me know if I can do anything at all for you. And then just sign Becky. So leaving and I keep the same pen with the notepad or with those notes. That way, when I have a name, I can put it at the top. But those handwritten cards, they go so far because people don't do it anymore. And Taylor, you were talking about how do you stand out? That's one of the little ways. I mean, whether we're 20 years old or 55 years old, a handwritten note is like, it's fun. You know, it's like kids getting mail. They just love something with their name on it. So to have those handwritten notes are really good. There's a pre-listing questionnaire. I'm going to share my screen just here real quick. Get to it real quickly. Here it is. This was in the packet that Amy was talking about. And as you can see, I don't use these questions. I write down beside it. And do you have about 5 minutes so I can ask you some very important questions before I come out to meet you? I like to rephrase that. I like to say, what is the best time for you to chat about your home? It'll only take a minute or two. Asking them, do you have time now? They're always going to say no. And if you say, what is the best time? It's an open-ended question. So just a tip there. And then listening and relating. Krista mentioned that a little bit earlier. Relating. How do you do that with a total stranger? Did you hear a child in the background? Oh, do you have a little one? How old are they? What's their name? Hear a dog barking. I have fur babies. What kind of fur babies do you have? If you hear any kind of, really listen, and then really listen to them. Where are you moving? Well, I think we're going to be moving to be closer to our kids. Oh, where do they live? And just really trying to relate to people. And then this number 8 is very important. This is how much, and that should be a do. How much do you owe on the property? And are you current on your payments? Please always ask, are you current on your payments? This is a time when people are not always current. Did I get rid of that? Am I back off screen sharing, Amy? You're on mute, babe.
I can't see it anymore.
Okay. Just want to make sure that I wasn't still a blockhead of written pages there. So anyway, just trying to relate to them in any way. I know I see a kitty cat, Shelley. What kind of kitty cat you have? Then we don't have I was going to say, I don't always have the opportunity to see somebody in person, but I recently listed a house and they were past clients of mine, and I set up a Zoom call for us to talk and was able to speak to them about the house, the condition and all that before going out. And I've also been able to FaceTime people. So that's also an option for you guys. It does actually put a face. Sometimes we're a little shy. I'm actually one of those that is a little bit shy on camera, believe it or not. I'd rather be in front of a group full of people rather than being on a film. But, you know, it's get past our own comfort zone sometimes. And pre-qualifying the seller, Krista, you talked about that, how I always really talk about whether people are worth my time. And I know that sounds selfish, but it's not. It's really balancing your life. And this is about a career that's worth having and a life worth living. And you can have both. You don't have to work full time. I do work full time. You don't have to work 100 hours a week. So just think about that. And if you don't have work to do, then think about how to create work to do. So if you're not working in your business, you need to be working on it. And then when you're finished working on it and in it, take time off. Don't just sit around wasting time. One of the reasons that I volunteered to take this class is because I don't use a pre-listing contract or pre-listing package. And I have committed myself to making a pre-listing package. So the one that was in this, I'm gonna share my screen a second time. This was a guide to selling your home. This is on the KW Connect. There's also an excellent one in Command. This to me, here we go. Excuse me, guys. This to me is wordy. Pictures say 1,000 words. So I'm not going to use this one with all these words, but it's a great guideline. And this, it's all about you. That is so important. Nobody cares about us. They don't care that I've been in the business for as long as I have. They don't care that I sold 62 homes last year. They don't care. They want to know that you're experienced. They want to know that you're capable of taking care of them, but they want to know that you care about them and that they become first. And so taking the time to understand their wants and needs, their expectations. This is like a really good guide, like I said, but I feel like it's really wordy. There are some detailed people, the high C's in the world, that will want every single word that you can give. I will tell you, if you have a high C, make sure there's not any spell typos, errors in this. And Amy Leo is a former teacher. She will help mark up your papers once you write them. If you need somebody to look over your shoulder to say, hey, there was some spelling errors, typos here or there, and she'll correct them for you. So you might get a B- or something. I don't know.
I'll get my red pen out.
We really appreciate you, Amy, in doing that for us because, you know, I do a lot of reading novels, and I'll see typos in those novels. And I'm like, how many people did this pass by? Like, you know, we all catch them, and it's like, this is crazy. Like, there's that many, you know, and this is a multi-million-dollar selling book. So.
And you know, when people see it, it might sound like something small, but when people see it that are detail oriented, then their minds go to, well, what details will they miss if they list my house?
Exactly.
So that's why.
And what's their level of education? You know,
right.
we want to be the professional always.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have this pre-listing packet, and I'm giving myself 2 weeks, guys, to have mine together. I challenge you guys. I know some of you are on teams. If you're not on a team, I'm going to ask you to be in my challenge of 2 weeks putting together a listing package, and then we can share them. And I will share mine with you guys. My price last year, my average listing, or not listing, but my average sell price was like 186, I believe. I'm wanting to push my sell price up. I really would like to climb. Now, in doing that, I realize that I'm going to have homes on the market for a longer period of time. Anything over 300,000 is taking a little bit longer to sell. I understand that and what comes with it, but I want to graduate myself into getting into more of a luxury market here. And that's one thing that I think a pre-listing package will help me to achieve, because those people, they're usually very strong decision makers, but they might take their time at making their decision. So if I am able to provide them with a pre-listing package, you're kind of selling yourself before you get there. And when you make it all about them, I think that is more important than coming back and talking about us. I think it's important to add technology in there and what KW has and what KW can do for them. And then I think reviews, testimonials are a huge thing to use. I mean, I know for myself, if I'm ever going to buy anything or make a purchase of any kind of, expensive item, I always look at reviews online. And so they're selling their house. It's an expensive item, whether it's, 100,000 or 500, it's a lot of money to them, and they are going to look at reviews. So I think reviews on a pre-listing package would be a great thing without talking about yourself. So that's just my thought, especially when you're
Becky?
saying, yes.
I had a question. So I'm new, so I've been only doing this for a month. So what are your suggestions, for creating that for a new agent that's not going to have real estate reviews? I mean, like for me, I've been in sales for 30 years. I mean, I have things on LinkedIn that people have said about me. Would you suggest doing that based on that type of skill set?
I would absolutely use them. And I also, on our Facebook, there's reviews for our office. Pull out some nice ones from there. And I think your LinkedIn ones would be fine. If you have family or even past clients that you've worked with in another capacity, they can actually go on Zillow and give you a review. It doesn't have to be specific to real estate. It could just be about sales or you as a person.
Okay.
Google reviews as well, and they will all allow you to copy and paste them. I even have had some handwritten ones, which I used to put in my package. I don't do that anymore because I like them to be able to verify, when I put that it was, and I usually just use a first name and white out last names. Zillow, I think, is anonymous anyway, but I think just them being able to see that and know that somebody did that for you, I think that's very important, whether it's this business or not. And like I said, you can also use the KW ones that are online.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great question. Okay, so they have now decided, because of Krista's great script practice there, that they're going to have an appointment with us. And we're going to go, and here's what I do when I go to somebody's house. And Amy's been with me on a listing appointment. Somebody we had never met in person when we went. And we always go in, we greet them, and we ask, is it okay if we tour your home? Now, a lot of people like to go and put them at the kitchen table and say, do you mind filling out this questionnaire as we look around? I'll let them do what they want. If they want to follow me around, show me features, that's okay. And I am super, super absorbent at that point. In fact, I could tell Amy, I could walk you through that house, tell you what colors it was, where every room was placed, where the furnace was, just because I have this memory about homes. I'm blessed with that, I guess. But anyway, if they want to follow me around, that's fine. But I'm taking notes the whole time, and they're like wondering, like, what are you writing down? And I just tell them, I'm just writing down like the placement of your rooms, what your carpet looks like, and that kind of thing, just so I'll have it fresh in my memory. And I also will tell them, that we are just making sure that we don't miss anything. So if they're walking around with us and they want to show us a secret hidden room or something, that's really cool. I have only been in one house with a secret hidden room, and it was really cool. But anyway, if walking through their home with them, and then I will ask them, can we sit at the table? A lot of times they want to sit in the living room at the couch. I prefer not to. I'd rather sit across from them at the kitchen table, but if they don't, they don't. But there's a lot of reasons for it. Psychologically, you're breaking bread with them if you're sitting at the kitchen table, and we like to relate to people when we're eating. That's a social thing that humans do, and so sitting at their table makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. It's also a place where you can spread out paperwork and show them. You're not having to juggle papers back and forth with a folder under it to sign and all of that. So when we sit down and talk, I always compliment them about their house. I go through a listing presentation that I have that talks a little bit about the team, talks about what we can do for them. It talks about our marketing. It does point out about professional staging, especially at that point. If I think they need staging, I will say, I will pay for the stager to come into your house. You would be surprised what little things they know that can make a huge difference. And they'll say, well, like what? I'm like, they're the professional. Let's wait and let them tell us, what needs to be done. That way, you're not the bad guy who said, this furniture's all misplaced. If they don't want a stager or their home is beyond being staged, I'm not going to waste my money on it. And if they don't commit to me that they'll do what the stager says, I won't waste my money on a stager. I'll say to them, do you want to get the most money out of your home? And by using a stager, we can do that. But I really want you to commit to me that you'll do what they're going to suggest. And I tell them, I'm not asking you to spend a lot of money. If they think that your bathroom needs to be remodeled and gutted and remodeled, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about decluttering, changing colors, replacing furniture, or placing it in different places. That's the kind of thing that our stagers do. You know, you can walk into a house. There's one I walked into St. Matthew's the other day, and literally one room was red. It was kind of almost a flag red, and one was the hunter green. You know, it was back in the jewel tone eras. If they would have just painted that house, they could have gotten probably $5,000 to $10,000 more, $600 paint job. So those are the things that stagers can really point out to people, spending a little bit of money to get a big return. So we talk about that in my listing presentation, and we also talk about professional photography. I always ask them at that point, you know, we already know at this point what their motivation is, but I ask them again, just for it to sink in. Now, you did tell me that you all needed to move to Indiana because you want to be closer to family. Is that correct? Yeah, that's what I told you. Okay. What does that look like to you? When do you want to be there? And sometimes they'll say yesterday, sometimes they'll say by the end of summer, you know, whatever their answer is, listen and respond to it accordingly. The listing that Amy and I went on, we've gone on a couple, but I remember the very first one, the girl was kind of, had gotten into debt and needed to sell her house. She made great money. We knew that she was going to buy again, but she needed the equity out of her house to pull herself out of debt. And so, you know, I said earlier that I will sit there until they are ready to list. I just ask her at the end of our presentation, are you ready to go ahead and get on the market? And then you shut up. You let the silence do the lifting. Let the silence do the lifting. It's huge. And don't feel intimidated if you sit there for 2 to 3 minutes in silence. It's not an awkward pause. It's a powerful pause. So what you're going to say is, are you ready to get your house on the market? Let's go ahead and sign the paperwork. Most of the time, you're sitting there going like this to them. They're going to agree with you because people want to agree with you. They want to do what you've given them permission to do. So go ahead, pull out the paperwork, and if they're like, well, I'm not ready, I have to paint this or I have to do that, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and sign the paperwork tonight, and we'll give you plenty of time to get the home ready, but let's go ahead and get the paperwork out of the way. If they're going to do that, I don't always make it belaboring and have them fill out the seller's disclosure form when I'm there. As long as I get that listing contract signed, my other documentation signed, I'm happy. I will leave the seller's disclosure with them and say, take your time filling this out. It's very important. Remember, this is from the time you owned your home forward. You can't know what you didn't know before the house was sold to you. So this is from the time you owned the house going forward. You want to put every detail that you can remember or think about down on the seller's disclosure. If you don't have enough room on here, do an asterisk, flip it over, and put details about that particular item. And I'll tell them, you know, I live in a house with a basement. It has been flooded twice. One was from a leak to the foundation, and one was because the storms were going so fast, my sump crops could not keep up. And I guarantee you both of those are going to be on a seller's disclosure form when I go to sell my house. It does not stigmatize your property that you've had an issue. It says, I'm aware that there was an issue and I fixed it. So letting people know, even if it's detailed, then they feel like, oh, they're really an honest person and I feel good about this buy. So be as detailed as you can. If you have any questions, call me because it's kind of a little complicated in some places. So if you have any questions, call me. I usually only get questions about the septic systems. They'll say, I know I'm on a septic tank, but I don't know what kind. And I'll be like, I don't either. No, I'll tell them sometimes you can call health department and know what that property was approved for. And sometimes health departments can even tell you where they are. where the lateral lines are, so forth. And if they can't, then there are companies. And I hope I'm not going to get in trouble by saying this, but if y'all ever have need a septic inspection, never use Shelby County inspectors, because they always tell you if it's more than 30 or 40 years old, it needs to be replaced. I'm like, I'm older than 40, I don't need to be replaced. So just because something's older doesn't mean that it doesn't work. So, you know, and I'll just tell you, they're really, really notorious for that. So just kind of put that in the back of your head when you're thinking about vendors. And you do want people that are good. But does anybody have any questions about me walking through, having closure? Open to discussion here. Any ahas? What are your thoughts? Anybody have anything? It's kind of hard when you're role playing with yourself, you know, that I'm not actually walking through somebody's house with you. I will say for you guys that are newer in the business, get familiar with terms of what things are in a house, such as wainscoting, coffered ceilings, textures, different textured walls. There's Venetian textures, there's sand textures. Just get familiar with that and get familiar with types of homes so that you have the right language when you're talking with your sellers. If they live in a bungalow, they know they live in a bungalow. Don't call it a story and a half.
Becky, could we kind of touch on, you know, if a house needs paint, but the sellers don't have much money, but we're not going to put it as is because, you know, obvious reasons it won't sell as quickly. People think something's wrong with it, blah, blah, blah. You get low balls, whatever. You know, when it comes to updates like that, where you don't want to hurt their feelings per se, but you know that, you know, a hot red kitchen is going to affect how people feel about that house. What does that conversation sound like? And if and when, is there ever a time when you pay for it yourself as an agent?
Yes, I have. If I do pay for things, I make sure that they are a totally motivated seller. And there is something called a mechanic's lien that if you don't get paid back, you can put on their house. I've never done that. Sometimes if I've lost $300, you just chuck it up to doing business and that's it. But yes, Chris, I have paid for things up front for people. Also, we've put homes on the market that won't pass FHA because there was a broken window or, you know, there was paint flaking on the windows and the seller did not have the money to do it. The buyers said, I'll do it. You know, and if you have a buyer and they do that, caution them. You are fixing up someone else's house. You're putting money into somebody else's house. So are you willing to take that risk? They need to know the risk that's involved with that if they're going to be willing to do the repairs themselves. Some homes, HUD homes, for instance, they do not allow you to go in and make repairs prior to closing. But with HUD homes, you can escrow up to $5,000 for the repairs to be done after closing. And I just had a very rare thing happen to me that we had to go kind of above FHA guidelines. Took a little time to work out. Property is in Bullitt County and it was on a well. And according to FHA guidelines, well water has to be tested. It has to be tested by the health department. Health department was not testing water because of the COVID virus. So we were like, okay. And if anybody, any of you on here know me, I don't take no for an answer. I'll find a way to work around it. So I said, okay, so they're closed. Sending it off to another lab is going to take 3 weeks. We don't want to do that. Water was at the street and the buyers were going to put their house on city water just because when you walked in there, the house smelled like rotten eggs from the sulfur from the well. And so they were like, we can't stand this. We're going to put it on city water. However, it's like $5,000 to hook it up to the city water. And I was like, you cannot put $5,000 into somebody else's house. I mean, you know, they get hit by a bus on the way to the closing and, you know, it'll happen. So what we did is we went back to the bank and we said, please understand this. There's health department is closed down. They will not test the water. It's going to take 3 weeks to get it tested and $500. That's a waste of $500 when they're going to hook it up to the city water as soon as it closes. Is there a workaround? Can we put money in escrow? And see, I'm thinking for the bank. They don't think about these things. You have to, as a problem solver, as the agent, think about how we can work around this. So I'm asking the bank in a very respectful way, can we escrow money? I had the processor tell me, let me talk to my manager. She came back to me and said, the manager said, you know, this is an FHA guideline. Unless we get an investor to say, yes, they'll accept it, or we get an exception from FHA, it's not going to happen. So, well, can we do that? Can we get an investor that will accept it? Can we get an FHA workaround? So they said, they came back to me and they said, we need a bid from the water company of what it costs to hook into that meter. We need a bid from a plumber of what it costs to run it to the home, all expenses included. And because my buyer, and I had the buyer in this situation, they did have a little bit of money, but they were putting it all down on the house. And in escrow, a lot of times they want you to pay it up front, and then you get the money back. In this situation, we were able to get FHA to write a check to the water company and to the plumber so that they did not have to pay that money out of pocket. And we're still sitting in escrow because the water company hasn't been out there yet. But that's just a workaround, and that's a mindset of a good agent, is to think about solutions to issues that come up. And sometimes we can't see the forest for the tree, you know, or the trees from the forest, whatever that saying is. If you want to think or bounce this off of somebody, talk to other people in the office. We have some of the greatest agents in the city, and every single one of us are willing to share and say, have you tried this? You know, have you looked at this? And just give you suggestions, some workaround suggestions on things that might come up, buyers or sellers, because I'll tell you, even after I don't even know, I'd have to look it up, but thousands of transactions I've been through, I still learn something almost every time, every transaction, I'm learning something. So for the new guys, just embrace that. I love to learn, and I just get excited when I learn something new. And to me, you know, it's all about what we do and being problem solvers. And Beth, you said that your background was in sales. So you know that is part of any sales is you know, being a problem solver.
Well, and Becky, something I learned the other day, I had an agent approach me about writing a reverse offer. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, no, I think it's a thing. And I was like, I don't know if that's a thing. And so, you know, if we're going to be switching to, I hear, because I've asked other people about it, and they said it was very common back when it was a buyer's market many years ago, that, you know, sellers were so desperate to sell their house, or they just, you know, had a buyer that was very interested but wouldn't write an offer because they didn't need to write an offer, that they would write a reverse offer. So can you, on a very basic level, share kind of what that looks like, or how you have that conversation with the listing? And you might not have had that conversation in a while, but
it's been a while, but yes, we have. Especially when somebody is desperate to sell, they need to be in another city, they're making 2 mortgage payments, you know, whatever their situation might be. And they're like, you know, you told me this person was interested. They had great feedback. Where's our offer? Where's our offer? And that's when you'll say, you know, we can write them a we will take offer. And that's basically what it is. Instead of it being we will give, it is we will take. And I said, you're kind of bidding against yourself when you do that. However, you're opening a dialogue. And I usually tell them, don't go to your bottom line at first, because if you do, you don't have any other cards to play. So let's say, you know, let's say your house is $150,000 and your very least that you were going to take was going to be $140,000. You might want to go back at $145,500 and say, we will take $145,500 and offer you a home warranty, and just see if that gets them to get off the fence. You know, that's basically what it was about, is just getting somebody who either was just not a good decision maker, or their agent wasn't, you know, giving them permission to sell it. And I say giving them permission to sell it all the time, because when you're out with the buyer and they find the perfect house, and it might be the only house they've looked at, very first house, and that clicked all their check boxes, but they say, you know, this is the first house I looked at, I want to see more. As an agent, you can ask them why. Why do you want to date another house or see another house? It's kind of like when you have found the person that you're in love with, and maybe they're the only person you've ever really dated, and you're in love with them, but you go, there might be another fish in the sea. Guess what? The first fish might get off the hook and you're never going to have that person. So I tell them the same thing about a house. You know, if you go home and think about this, you may never sleep in this house. This market is hot. You like this house? Let's cancel the rest of the showings and go write an offer on this. It's giving them permission. Some personalities are like, oh, yeah, you're right. I don't want to lose this house. Other personalities are, I want to see more houses. Go show them more houses, but just make sure that they understand by going and looking at more houses, this one might not be available. It could be 2 hours from now and it might not be available.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up something with the home warranty. I've heard so many agents say, "Oh, those do nothing. Oh, I ask for them every time." You know, what is your stance on, you know, including those in the first offer? Because sometimes people will come back even though they're $500 and negotiate out of it, which, you know, it is what it is. But what do you think about them?
I actually like home warranties, and I tell sellers that it is a protection for them and it is a protection for buyers. That being said, you want a reputable home warranty company. We have a rep that comes in with First American, and her name is Kelly DeGeorge, and she's awesome. I have used First American. They're almost one of the least expensive on the market. They have a $75 deductible, so most people can afford $75 if their furnace goes out or their air conditioning goes out. A couple of summers ago, it was extremely hot. Air conditionings were going out everywhere because they were just taxed. And one of my buyers, the air conditioning went out, and I called Kelly and I said, she's miserable. And everybody on the list, you know, your all's providers are telling her it's going to be 2 weeks. Kelly said, Becky, tell her to go buy a window unit. I will reimburse her. So she had her go buy an air conditioning window unit for her bedroom. And she said, and if you have an HVAC guy that owes you a favor, go have them fix it. She said, if you can pay the invoice or your client can pay the invoice, I'll get it reimbursed. So that's what we did. And I had a guy, and the repair was little. It was like, it was nothing. You know, it was one of those things that she was miserable for a week, but it took him like 5 seconds to fix it. But I thought it was really special that Kelly cared about how comfortable my client was, and paying for that air conditioning window.
No, those are like $200-300.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
bought one
was,
yesterday. I would know.
there you go. There you go. So I thought that was really nice. I don't think that's in their fine print. It's just because the relationship that we have with them. And same way 210 that comes in with our office, they have a very good spokesperson for our area. You can call that person. They really want to work with us. And I don't ever tell anybody that a warranty is useless. The minute you do that, you've just warranted their house. And think about what I just said. You tell them a warranty is useless and they have something go out, you've just warranted their house, because you could have gotten them a warranty, or they could have gotten one for $380, $400, $500. You tell them it's not necessary, something goes out, they're going to come to you. Just saying, you know. And I feel, you know, some people, and I've heard agents say that they're not worth the paper they're written on. Well, use a reputable one, and they are. There was one, and I don't even know if they're still in business. It was American. Do you remember, Amy, what the name of that one was? American something. America's Shield. America's Shield. AmeriShield or American Shield. Anyway, they sued a real estate agent. And just letting you know this, because they are not used in our area anymore, but they do use them in other areas. Locally here, they sued an agent because they said that they were a party to the transaction. They would not cover something that was in their contract, and the homeowner sued them, and the warranty company turned around and sued the agent because they wrote the contract. Mind blowing, but that's what happened. And when that happened, American Shield, that's what it was, American Shield. So when that happened, it was like, no, we're writing these to protect people and as a service to your home warranty companies, not for us to be liable, for what's in the content. So just know your business when it comes to those home warranties. And probably if you ask 10 different people in the office, you get 10 answers. You probably get 5 or 6 answers. But um, in my experience, in my opinion, I think that they are good for both buyers and sellers. Good for sellers from the standpoint that, let's say people were in there for 30 days and something goes out. Then they call their agent. First thing they do is they call their agent. My air conditioning just went out. What should I do? Well, if you have a home warranty, you say, oh, let me look up your home warranty number, give you a telephone number and your number. And all you have to do is call them, let their service person come out. And all you'll owe is $100 deductible for them to fix it. If they can't fix it, then they'll replace it. Isn't that wonderful? Now, if they don't have a warranty and they call you and say, air conditioning just went out. And I know these sellers knew about that. I just know they had to have known. It had to have been acting up. We don't know that. We have no clue. We have no clue. So it protects the seller against somebody coming back and saying, you already knew about this condition. You were trying to hide it, put a Band-Aid on it, whatever. And then it also protects the buyer from being so frustrated and being out a bunch of money, within the first year. So.
Yeah. And I'll share a personal story because it's crazy, but I got a home warranty for one of my buyers, and 2.5 months after she closed on the condo, her HVAC went out, and I got her a home warranty, and it was like a $3,000 HVAC, and she had to pay $700 to completely replace it. So, but she got a new HVAC for $700, and so she actually filed a complaint against me to KREC or GLAR, I don't know. But I had to go and sit down with lawyers and everything. And, it's crazy, guys, because that's super rare to get a complaint filed against you. But I did my due diligence and I got her home warranty. And so I had all of my evidence of like, I took care of her and she was so happy at closing. And then just because, it's not my fault that $700 wasn't easy to come by for an HVAC, but it could have been $3,000, So you have to stand your ground and say, you know what, I did the most I could. And asking for a home warranty, I always thought, not many sellers come back at you for that because compared to the whole amount of the sales price and then right under it's a $500 home warranty, they don't think too much of it. However, if you are not going to ask for it, you really need to do your due diligence with your buyers. And I think it's beneficial to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and ask for one because you never know. Now, in super competitive situations, you're going to have to really talk through with your buyers. We could lose an offer because we asked for a home warranty. How strongly do you guys want one? And then are you comfortable paying with it yourself? And don't ever offer to buy it yourself because it's something that you're talking to them about. It's their choice if they want to ask for it or not. But it's not the agent's responsibility to pay for it unless you really, really, really want to or something. But most people don't care enough either way. It's just a nice thing to have if you need it. But just to be cognizant of, if you're not going to do it in the contract, you at least need to talk to them and have that conversation because it's still a section in the contract. Like you have to check something that they either don't want one or they're going to pay for one or whatever. So you need to tell them, are you guys comfortable not asking for one? Because just like Becky said, if something goes wrong, you're their first phone call. And I've had 3 of my 26 closings where their HVAC went out in their first 3 months. So HVACs break and they do all kinds of things. They need new fluid. It's expensive. And so you want to make sure that you just cover your bases. So just want to add that on there.
I have a question. So is it normal then, generally and I understand the competitiveness of not wanting to do it while, there would be multiple offers that might be something that comes off the table. But is it normal then to ask the seller to pay for the home warranties generally?
I always did.
Often we do ask the seller. I will say as a part of my listing presentation and package, I always put a warranty on the house as soon as I list it because there's a lot of things that will be covered for the seller while their house is on the market. HVAC is one of them that is not covered unless they pay extra money for. And it's kind of a challenge because Some people would say, well, you just got the warranty to get this covered. That's not what it's about. However, when you do put it on there, it makes them feel good that you've thought enough about them to tell them, I'm putting a warranty on this house. It's no cost to you until we close. And this is what you're protected, for, and give them the brochure, let them see. And then you're thoughtful that you were putting that in place. And guess what? It's free. It
When
doesn't cost
you
anything.
said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you said when you list it, you put a warranty on it, what do you mean by that?
I will call, we usually use First American just
Right.
because Kelly was so impressive to me on that one transaction. But when we list it, I will call First American and place a warranty on that house. And we'll tell them it's for sale, it's not sold yet. We inform them when it goes under contract so that they'll know approximately when it's going to close. And then we can put in the listing, this comes with, for an acceptable offer, this comes with the warranty. And I always put acceptable offer because, and any seller can say no to any offer for whatever reason they want to. However, and except for prejudice, you can't do it for that. But if they don't like the price, the term, or whatever, they can say no. But I always put in the offer that, or in my listings, if I have already a warranty on it, I either put it in the listing notes or in the agent's notes. Now, right now, I have 2 homes on the market that were completely gutted and flipped, and permits were pulled. I didn't put a warranty on those homes because everything's already warranted, basically. But on relist or homes that 20, 30 years old, I will just call the warranty company and say, hey, I'm listing this home, we'd like to place 210 or 3, or the very basic is what I usually do, the $380 one with First American.
So are you paying for that?
No, it's free. The company actually, First American, does not charge you at all to put it on the listing for the seller. Then they do protect the seller under certain aspects.
Okay.
There's brochures in our office. You should pick one up. It's on that wall that's by the mailroom. There's brochures over there, and you can kind of flip through that, or you can go to their website, firstamerican.com.
I'll have to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, Bethany, I can send that to you because she's actually in the Seven Hills office.
Oh, okay.
So, I always would have that seller coverage. It was a real easy transition for the buyers. So once you get that offer, it's just a quick, okay, now we're transferring this to the buyers. And the plus for sellers is, if we have this covered and it's a quick transfer to your buyers, if something pops up, it's more than likely they're going to call that warranty company. They're not going to try to, come back to us, which, as long as something was covered in the seller's disclosure, it wouldn't matter anyways. But it was a little bit more of a peace of mind for your sellers.
Right. And then when that transfers to the buyer, then is that the point where the discussion is who's going to pay for it?
No, that would be in the contract
Okay.
itself. So anytime, even if you go and you're showing a home that in the agent or in the comments of the listing, it says this is under warranty, you still want to write it in the contract.
Okay.
That the seller is paying for the warranty.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, just a side note, my name's just Beth, B-E-T-H.
Oh, thank you. So Becky, I had a question. I know this is kind of talking about logistics, but one thing that came up earlier was the septic. And when you're talking to your sellers, managing expectations with them about inspection, I know one of the things I learned the hard way is that when a septic inspection happens, sometimes they have to get it cleaned out in order for it to be inspected properly. Can you speak a little more about that and how you would prepare your sellers for that?
Yes. I always, especially if the house has been vacant for very long, I tell them when we list, we're going to do our own septic inspection. It's not really an inspection. We're going to do a septic test is what I tell them. And we will fill up the bathtub. We will fill up 2 sinks of water and we will let it go through. And if you are in that house with them and you start hearing gurgling, go look in a tub or in a toilet, stop that drain because you're going to have toilet water backing up into the house. That basically tells you if the tank is full or not, or if there's a clogged line going to the tank. If they have been living there for several years and they're like, we've never had a problem with our septic tank, we've never had to have it cleaned out, then I prepare them and say, you know what, if you've never had it cleaned out and you've been here for 3 or 4 years, likelihood is it needs to be cleaned out. And it's gross, but I have the conversation with them. If it's a tank and a lateral line, here's how it works. The byproducts go into this tank. The poo goes to the bottom, the sludge goes to the bottom of that tank, and then the water portion of it is pushed out to the lateral lines out into the yard. You can usually in the summertime see where lateral lines are because the green grass is greener where the lateral lines are. They're being fertilized. and I'm just going to go back to something I thought was real cute that Kelly Hossetter said. You know, there's a saying that the grass is greener on the other side. She said it might be, but it might just be a busted septic tank. I thought that was really cute. But anyway, so explaining to them how those systems work. Now, if you have a spray system, it's different. And if you have what's called a wetlands, it's different. Wetlands is something that is very, very, very expensive to put in. And if they have not been maintaining it, it's very, 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 very expensive to repair. And when I'm saying very, very, usually a septic system on a 3-bedroom will cost you $35,000 to $5,000 to completely redo it versus $20,000 for a wetlands. I mean, they're expensive. And wetlands are wonderful if the person understands it, who live there and who is selling the property. Wetlands were created to have certain plants planted that absorb waste. They are usually on the side of a hill. They may be protecting a water source, a creek or a pond or a lake. And they're fantastic systems, but they do have to be maintained properly. They're pretty easy to maintain if you're understanding of what they are. I sold a house out in Shelby County, and the house was only about 4 years old, but the people that lived there never did anything with this wetlands septic system. And it was about $15,000 on that one. It was about $15,000 to repair it. You have to build retaining walls. There has to be so much gravel, so much sand, and then so many different types of plants that go in there. Some of them are year round, and then some of them come just more in the spring where it's wetter. So, you know, you never knew that becoming a real estate agent would have to make you a septic system person, but it does. Also makes you a termite person.
And a therapist.
And a therapist.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, going back to that listing appointment. So you're there with them. They like what you're saying. The rapport is good. What about when they say, well, I've got a few other agents that are showing up and I'd like to hear what they have to say?
I will tell them I totally respect that. I still ask for the listing, and sometimes people will say, you know, I'm really comfortable with you. I think you would do a great job. But I did tell these other couple of people that I would talk to them. And I will say, do you know them personally? That's one thing, because if they do, you could make them mad at this point. If they don't know them, they'll say, no, you know, I just talked to them on the phone like I did with you. I will say to them, I would be more than happy to call them and let them know that you decided to use me. And that way you don't have to be uncomfortable talking to them. I'd be more than happy to make that phone call for you. And then I'll ask again for them to sign. Another thing, and I forgot to tell this, so I'm so glad you brought this up, Amy. When I sit down with them and before we talk numbers, I'll tell them that we need to have the consumer agency guide signed. And I'll tell them that this is a guideline that we must have them sign that before we talk numbers. It's just a law in Kentucky. And you guys, it is a law in Kentucky to have that signed before you talk numbers. Really, really hard on open houses when they come in and start talking about numbers, because you really have to be careful. But before we go over any numbers, I would like for you to sign this disclosure. It doesn't obligate you to me at all. It's covering me, and I'm doing what the law requires out of myself. You're putting a pen in their hand. They're already signing forms.
Mm-hmm. You're training them.
Yeah, you're training them. So that is, you know, and if they'll try to hand you a pen back, say, oh, hang on to that for a minute. you might have questions about the CMA we're getting ready to go over, and we can take notes with that. But you keep that pen in their hand, and then sometimes at the end I will say, "Are you ready to get listed?" Sometimes I say, "Are you ready to hire me?"
Mhm.
Depends on their personality. And Krista, you are so right at the beginning of watching their personalities and knowing who your audience is, and we need to mirror people.
Mhm.
You know, if they're really excitable, I can be just as excited, you know, but at the same time, I want to keep a calm on it because I'm their professional. And sometimes that real excitable person is one that needs to be reined in a little bit, you know, because this is a transaction, don't fight by the seat of your pant kind of thing. And then if it's a real detailed person, and I'll be honest with you, that high C is the hardest for me to relate with, I guess is the right word. But what they really want is a lot of information. And so with them, we're going to talk those numbers. We're going to go over those numbers. And I'm going to know them inside and out before I go. I do on any appointment, no matter the personality. But you know those numbers, you know the statistics, you know what our average sell price to listing is.
You have to have the patience to answer the same question worded different ways.
Yes, yes, you do.
Yeah. One thing that I usually tell folks in the very beginning, as far as to agents, is be prepared for a high C. Don't be surprised by a high D. So you need to have everything with you, this full-blown listing presentation, the numbers, everything. And then when you get there, then you assess, is this someone who just wants to make some decisions and get me out of here? And be willing to not go over those things. You know, don't be shocked by someone just saying, "Can I just sign already?" Or, "Well, yes, here's a pen. Here's your paper."
Thanks, Beth, for coming on. We saw you in the chat. We thank you.
Okay, so I know that this is something that Seamus will talk about too. I'd like to see how you phrase this, as far as when folks have put a little bit too much money into their house to their taste.
It really depends on what it is. Oftentimes people will think, and I have a for instance right now. This person put a all-season room on the back of their house. They paid $50,000 for it. And I told them, I hope you really, really enjoyed spending time in this room. It's kind of like a vacation. You enjoyed it. The money's gone. And that's basically what I say. You know, you're going to recoup some of your money, but some of the money that you spent is gone. And so you have to look at it like it was like a vacation, like you really enjoyed being able to have your coffee out here every morning. You enjoyed having parties out here in this room around your pool, you know, whatever. And that's usually, you know, but again, that depends on what it is. And that was actually the conversation I had with her. The other things can be maybe they've put granite countertops in and scraped hardwood floors, or acacia hardwood floors, which are $30 a foot versus $250 a foot for oak. You know, that's a tough one. So, you know, they say, well, I put $30 a foot into this floor and that's what I want out of it. And I'll say, you know, sometimes we get our full return on investment and sometimes we don't. So, you know, it is still, this is what the market dictates. It's not what we spent. It's not what we need to make. It is about what the market will bear and what it will appraise for. Because, you know, you could have somebody come in here tomorrow and say, I'll give you $1 million for your house. But guess what? It has to appraise if they're going to get a loan. If they're paying cash, that's great. But if not, it has to appraise. So we have to be realistic about our numbers. Seamus you guys be on that call because, I've taken that class with him. He's really great. And he'll just tell them, be informed or seller beware. You know, if they just go up against him and buck what he says as far as numbers, he said, okay, but beware, you know. And will I take an overpriced listing? That's a question. I haven't been asking this. Yes, I will. Why will I take an overpriced listing? Because I'm wanting buyers, you know. Does it make me look bad if that expires and it never sold? It does affect your reputation. You can go in and cancel the listing just before it expires so you don't have it on your record. but neighbors are going to see that there was a sign in the yard and that the house didn't sell. So it does kind of make you look a little bit bad, but oftentimes neighbors will call and say, what are they thinking? Why are they asking that much money? And then you can say, oh, are you thinking about selling your house? You know, so, you know, it really.
You work in like reducing clauses?
I do. I put those in up front. Thank you for asking that, Krista. If somebody is just hard set that they want to list this house at 3.25 and it should be listed at 300, I will tell them that if we do not have an offer within the first 2 weeks, the hot market that we're in, then they have to reduce. And it needs to be a significant reduction. We're not going to do this $5,000 at a time thing. We're going to go to where I suggested they listed their house. And I'll give you, I work with a lot of investors. A lot of you all know that. I have a guy that flips homes. We put one of his houses on the market over a year ago. It didn't sell for 170. Then he had a friend of his who wanted to rent it. So he rented that house to him for a year. This year we put it back on the market and he wanted to put it on at 180. And I said, we need to be at 175. No, I want 180. Sat on the market for 30 days. I said, we're going to 175. And he said, okay. At 175, we ended up getting 3 offers and it sold for 186.
For $5,000 difference.
Yeah. So when you're pricing things, it's that sweet spot. You have to.
Well, because it's in 25 increments. And so you got the lower price bracket in.
Yes. Yeah. And they ended up being like, we have to have this house. Well, we have to have this house. And we got 3 above price offers and it sold for 186. So it was a very aha moment for him. And I have a good enough relationship with him. I could go back and say, I told you so.
Don't do that to me again.
Exactly. I'll tell him, you know, listen to me. When I say it should be priced here, let's go here. You'll get the most for it. You know, and I will tell you across the board that works that way. So that's a great question. And the 25 increments, if y'all don't know what Krista's talking about, a lot of the websites that people go on and look for homes, there'll be price points like 100 to 125, 125 to 150, 150 to 175. I think there's more of a jump in those lower numbers, but then it gets $25,000 increments when it gets a little bit higher. So with that in mind, when you're listing something, a round number is sometimes a better number than the 99999s that we see sometimes. And I just educate my people about that. If you're at 175 and somebody's looking between 175 and 200, they're going to see your house. If you listed it at 174,999, they're not going to see your house. So put it at that 25,000 mark.
Mm-hmm.
So just, you know, that's true on the low end and that's true on the high end. So I always do explain that to people, and they most of the time know what I'm talking about because they've been on those sites looking and how it, you know, puts in the increments of the drop down bars.
Well, and Becky, I'm wondering, you know, a lot of agents want to get in a relationship with investors. A lot of agents get very overwhelmed or not educated enough to work with investors until they really understand that section of the industry. But, you know, for the agents that do have those relationships, it's a good chunk of their business. So, you know, with you working with investors, where did you build those bonds that, you know, some newer agents could take advantage of to try and get in on that part of the market?
There are some networking groups that investors go to. I have not personally gone to those groups. I ended up working with an investor. I'm trying to think how we met, but anyway, I ended up working with an investor that has introduced me to several different other investors that have also come on board with me. And then I've had people that I knew had some wealth, and I asked them if they wanted to grow wealth in a quicker manner, and asked them if they wanted to get into flipping real estate. I explained to them how it works. They had cash sitting in a bank doing nothing for them, and they turned it around. And, you know, instead of making, even if you put your money into a money market or you know, wherever, you're going to get maybe a 2 to 3% return on your investment. In real estate. I mean, and I can show them numbers. You're going to get a 20% return most of the time, if not better. And I have one investor that won't even fool with it if he's not going to make 50 grand off of his profits. So, I mean, and he sells about 12 a year. So
That's nuts.
it's nuts. And I'm
He
gonna
must
tell
do
you,
like really high end upgrades.
he does really nice upgrades, but he buys cheap homes. He
Well,
buys
that too.
them cheap. He buys them cheap.
Are they
and
off market? And he's
Uh-huh.
in like networking groups to know about them before they hit MLS?
almost all of them are off market that he buys, and some of them he buys from me, some of them he doesn't. Um, how do you find them? If y'all figure that out, let me know.
I know that I get asked that all the time, and I'm like,
Yeah, it's
go
hard.
make some friends. Other than that, I really don't know. Go door
It's
knocking
hard.
and ask awkward questions.
Well, one thing that I did notice, and you know, I've gotten on a lot of the wholesalers lists, and some of them ask retail prices. They're not worth, you know,
Yeah.
what they're asking for them. But I've really started watching the trends on those wholesale lists, and almost all of them, if you look up the house, the tax billing address is not the same as the house. So they find people that are not occupying the property, and maybe they approach them. There are lists that you can buy online that are like recorded divorces, that kind of thing. You can buy those lists, and I'm sure
Man,
that they send out, you know,
that's a
weekly.
lot of hustle.
That's a lot of hustle. That's a lot of hustle. If I find one for my investors, I will always, you know, give them first opportunity if they want, you know, to look to go into it. I have one that he goes he doesn't care. I mean, the stinkier, the uglier, the more torn up it is, the better for him. And then I have another one that says, I don't want a complete remodel. I just want to get in and get out, make 20 grand and move on. So it really just depends on who you're working with.
Taylor, do you know what wholesaling is?
Yes, Katie Messenger, they both explained it to me to an extent. Steve and Katie did, but it's kind of a hard concept to understand. I guess to me it was.
It's a very sticky real estate situation. You better know your stuff if you're getting into it because there's so much legality and liability in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much an agent saying, hey, I found a house for X amount they want to sell, but not like posting it around. And then you know someone's interested in it and you're like, hey, I found a house for X plus 20 grand if you wanted to buy it, but they don't know about the original X. And then usually the agent keeps the middle section because you're the one who connected the two. Usually, I don't think most of them are that high, Becky. It's usually only like less than 10 grand between the two prices, but you just want to make sure you're ethically doing right by people. And some agents take advantage of that.
Yeah, it sounds illegal. That's why I was like, that sounds confusing. Whenever she explained it, I was like, surprised that's legal.
I actually don't wholesale properties out. If I have a wholesaler, and there's a group of people, there are some agents that do it, and like Krista said, it's a sticky situation. It's a slope. If you do, be full disclosure that you bought this property and that you're making a profit on it. And at that point, you're not really an owner, and that's why some agents feel like, oh, it's justifiable because I'm not an owner, I'm just selling a contract. I'm sorry, if this goes to court, your license is going to be up for question. I'll just put it that way, because, like Krista said, you're going, number one, over here to this seller, and you're saying, I'll give you $20,000 for this house, and that's a ridiculous number, but I've just made it up. So I'll give you $20,000 for this house, and you're going to sign an agreement that that says I have exclusive right to sell it, and it's an assignable contract. Well, you might call Harry Borders and say, I've got an assignable contract on this, and then he puts kind of like a lien or a recorded contract on that property. Then you go out to the public and you say, I got this house, it's $40,000. And they are jumping all over it. Well, guess what? You've screwed that buyer out of $20,000, you know, and that's where it gets slippery. When I say that I work with wholesalers, I'm saying that there's a lot of people that are non-agents that do this for a living. They go out there, they scope up. A lot of them are transparent. Joel Cecil is one that he'll say, you know, this is how much it is, and we just want to make $7,000 off of it. He has a partner, and I don't make money when I resell those. I ask for the listing when it gets fixed up. That's where I make my money, and I'm okay with that. And I feel like that's a service for my investor. Joel has to work with that buyer. That's not about me. So, I'll tell my cash investors, hey, this guy's got this deal right now, and it looks like the numbers are great. You need to know your back end numbers for sure. It's up to the investors to know how much money they're going to put into it. I do have one investor that I'm still kind of hand holding, and we'll go over the numbers, and I'll say, you got to hold out 8,000 because HVAC kind of looks old. You may or may not get by with this roof. Just depends on who appraises it. So I'll help him budget his money to know. And if he's the one that doesn't like a whole lot of work, he would rather just go in with cosmetics, and he's okay. If he makes 20 grand on it, he's happy. But I do have the one that he will not even waste his time for 20 grand. So
Becky, do your investors know Louisville enough to do their own research on areas? Because in this category, if you flip a house and make it gorgeous, you and I and many people on this call have shown homes that could be worth so much more, but they're right in front of, a drug-infested apartment complex, and they're just not going to get what they put the money into it to get. Are you having to have those conversations, or most of your people kind of know their stuff?
Most of them ask me, what's the retail number on this if it's beautiful? And so that's where you have to know. I called it the back end. That's the retail number. We have to know the market. And, I had one, and his house is still sitting. He was 100% sure that this one property is going to be a big return for him. And I said, I'm going to tell you, there's a business, industrial business right behind it. It's on a busy street. It's in an up and coming area, but it's not there yet. I think you're about a year early. I said, I don't think you're going to get the number you want. And he said, I think I will. Well, so far he hasn't. And he's asking me, what should I do? I said, put a tenant in it. I said, because he goes, well, I don't want to go into more debt, because he's cash. He does everything cash. And I said, well, you were early. We had this conversation that you're about a year ahead of your time on that. You're about 2 blocks away from where it's really already booming. So, your choice is to put a tenant in it, do a cash out refi, keep your money going, or lower your price. That's your choice. And they don't like to hear it. I mean, they really don't, but it's our duty really as professionals to say, I had another one of my investors who bought in a beautiful neighborhood off of Highway 42, gorgeous house, sitting in a flood zone. I said, no, it's in a flood zone. You're in a $300,000 neighborhood, but this house and the 5 next to it are in a flood zone. He bought it anyway. He lost money. On that one. And he came to the closing, and he brought me a gift. I couldn't believe it. He brought me a gift certificate to have dinner. And he said, I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm like, I'm so sorry you lost money.
I bet his wallet is too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I'll tell you too, you earn so much respect when you talk to a very high level investor and you're like, yeah, you should sell this. You need to rent it or you're going to be in the hole. And you can look at them and say that they respect you, and you've earned their trust so much quicker when you can have those conversations, because there's a lot of smart investors and flippers out there. They know their stuff, they know how to work hard, and they know how to work fast. But they don't have all of the database and knowledge that we have access to. So yes, I think it's really important to be the expert, but to also know how to just stand firm and say, no, this is what the numbers say. And so you can deal with it. But yeah, renting, when you talk to an investor about renting, it usually does become the best option if something happened in the house, there's a foundation, it flooded, whatever, and they're in the hole. Like, they just need to wait it out if they can.
Mm-hmm. And the one that lost the money on that house, he did have a loan on it. That's why, and that's actually why he lost money, is because he had to pay interest. He also had to carry, because he had a loan on it, he had to carry flood insurance. And so with those carrying costs and the fact that it was in a flood zone, it cost him money. I mean, it was in it. I didn't ask him exactly what he lost on it, but I do know he lost. You know, buying a house and buying it right, and then knowing your retail number is great. But as far as knowing the numbers that they're going to put into it, that depends on what kind of finishes they're going to put in it. Most of my investors know what that's going to be. The one that's kind of, he's pretty easy and doesn't need to make as big a chunk of change as the others. He always puts concrete countertops. It's his signature. He always puts concrete countertops in the kitchens and modernizes homes. And it's a cool thing, but it's really funny because when I'm showing homes or I'm looking through the MLS and go, oh, I know who flipped that one. I know who flipped that one. I know who flipped that one, because they have their signatures on them, you know, and it's fun. It's an interesting part of the business, and I really enjoy it. But it's also, Taylor and Howie and Katie, if you can get in on investors, it's a good source of income. I have one that flipped 12 last year with me. I had another that was 4, another one that was 2. I mean, that's guaranteed listings, which is guaranteed sales.
I think it's what, as Krista was saying, that it's kind of intimidating, I guess is the best way to put it. So in the beginning, I had one that I was speaking to that actually used to rent to me, and he's kind of like a mover and a goer. He's an independent contractor, and with my knowledge right now, I feel like I'm not up to speed to direct him in a certain way, because I mean, I sent him a few properties and he was interested, but then he already had bought one. He's working on that. Yeah, but I think it's more of like, I want to have enough information to inform them, and I don't want to feel like I'm going to say something wrong and they're like, that's not right, and then I'm immediately discredited. So
don't worry so much about what you say. Most of the time, for most investors, the reason that they want you to be their expert is knowing that what that house is worth once it's fixed up. Now, we can't predict the future. I have one guy that gets in there and gets out. I mean, big renovations can be done in 4 weeks, like big major renovations, because he has a full-time crew that works just for him. He moves them from one house to the next house to the next. He might have 5 going on at a time. So he's quick. Investors who say take 3 months or 4 months to fix their home, that's a little tougher, because then you're saying, right now today, if this house was Mac Daddy beautiful, and this is what you could expect to get. I can't promise you 4 months what it's going to be, but right now this is the retail price on it. Knowing that retail price is really the most valuable piece of information for those investors. So don't let your lack of knowledge intimidate you. Just remember that knowing how to price a home correctly, and taking Seamus's class this week will help you with that. And
having conversations with our own agents who are flippers, and
Exactly.
like seeing their flips, seeing kind of what their eyes look at when they go in a house, because usually investors will find their own homes, because agents, we don't see them in time because they're off market and things like that. But when you can go in and you're like, and you can do the calculations of like, okay, new floors, new paint, new appliances, new countertops, new bathroom vanity, you know, and you can start calculating very rounded basic numbers of what that would cost. Then you start to understand, okay, can anyone even make 10 grand on this house? Because that's usually what investors make. You know, Becky's that makes 50 grand, man knows his stuff. And he's probably like a hard one to get under contract, because he just won't go over his price in his head.
That's 5 under contract right now. And we did cross the river. We're over in Indiana now, because there's a few more deals over there than there are here. But he has found some great deals here. I've helped him to find some great deals here as well. I also flip homes. It's been 2 years since I've done one. But Dave and I used to do a lot of flipping and renovation work.
Did
And
you do it with your own hands? Did you hire people?
this last one, I hired everybody. I didn't touch it. In the past, we did it ourselves. We did the work ourselves. This last one, I knew that if I did it with my own hands, I was taking away from the majority of my income, which is selling property.
Mhm.
So I calculated the cost of labor into my cost, and I was able to do that without taking a loan out. Sold it myself to the first person who looked at it, and it appraised for like 4,000 more than I priced it. So I'm like going, boom. But you know what? I was happy. I made good money on it. I made about $30,000 on it.
That's awesome.
And you know, he was thrilled. And
Oh, your computer went out. There you go. There you go.
Okay. I think what's going on is it starts to go to sleep. And I have to move my mouse around.
Well, at least you're entertaining enough. We're still here. Your computer's just giving up on you.
Can I answer any other questions anybody have?
I do have one other question. In regards to architecture in a house and learning those terms, does anyone have any advice on like a book or what I can do to learn more about those terms and sound more educated when I'm speaking about a house?
Oh, Becky. Mm-mm.
Can't hear you, Becky.
Mm-mm.
Try again.
Somebody else is going to have to speak up then. If you
There we
can't.
go. You got it.
I was going to tell you that talking to home inspectors is a great way of learning how a home is.
Uh-oh, she's going.
Yeah.
Okay,
computer
somebody
hates
take
it.
over.
My partner's dad is actually an appraiser, so I guess I could probably talk to him.
Oh, that would be the best because
I
they
didn't
know
even
like
think about that.
everything. But when you start out, you just need to know like what's a Cape Cod, what's not a Cape Cod. And then when you start going up in price bracket, like proffered ceilings, I just learned that a month ago. You know what those were called. And so Florida rooms, sunrooms, a lot of times I would just like Google like popular, when you don't want to do the modern ones, like just modern architecture features, just Google that because those are the ones that if you talk to people who are looking more, you know, in their particular, that's usually the kind of terms they're talking about now. Versus everything else is just called outdated.
Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense.
And Taylor, I would also recommend going to Lowe's. And I always tell new agents to do that. Spend some time, block out an hour or two to go to Lowe's or Home Depot, go to every department, go to flooring, go to kitchens, you know, even HVAC, just pick their brains. Say, show me, and it's something tangible that's right there in front of you that shows you the difference between quartz and granite. And you don't have to be an expert at these things. At the same time, when you're walking through a house, you're going to have your clients ask you, what kind of countertops is that? Or it's good to know.
And there's certain shows. There's certain shows on HGTV, like we all make fun of it and stuff, but there are shows that actually educate you on why they do the certain updates they do as they go along. And, you know, I've learned, you know, that marble countertops stain and they can't be cleaned because of that show and just that kind of stuff. We all know what shiplap is because of HGTV and Joanna Gaines. And so, you know, just that it is beneficial to watch. Like I know Fixer Upper's decent at it. Property Brothers are pretty good at it because they do a lot of updates on their stuff. But I don't really know other shows. But yeah, just be cognizant and watch it every now and then, like a homework assignment, not like you're forced to. But, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
No.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we can.
Okay, now you can. I don't know what it is because I'm sitting right here plugged in, but I was going to suggest, Taylor, do find out your kind of basic terms of how construction is. And that's just really great for going over home inspection reports with people. And I suggested a home inspector because they know what a seal plate is. That's, you know, what the joists set on for walls.
No, she's still going.
Yeah, we're getting good at reading your lips.
Oh,
It's
man,
like,
that's
it's so funny. It's like timing out. But
My sister-in-law is actually doing a final walkthrough tomorrow for her house in Indiana, and I'm gonna go to that. So I figured that
that'll be good. Well, and Becky, I was going to ask you too, you know, I was trained to go to every inspection. And then after a while, many agents do not, because there are legalities in that in itself. However, Taylor, if you ever have time to go to an inspection, if you don't know how to coach your buyers and you don't want to walk that line, just listen to the inspector, because that teaches you a lot in itself. And study the inspection report that you get as well. Becky, do you ever go to inspections?
very, very rarely. Very
Okay.
rarely.
Most agents do not, Taylor. I'm
Right.
gonna tell you that.
And right now, some of the buyers cannot, depends on what warrant or what home inspection company.
Oh, there she goes.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
guys.
You're
Okay,
back.
Okay.
That's so weird.
So,
It goes out for like 3 seconds, but we get to.
Okay, so most of them go over those inspection reports virtually online with you, if you want to zoom in on it, or with the client themselves. That's a great way. And, you know, it's okay to ask questions in front of your client. It's like, let me get clarity on that. So you're saying that that band right there had termite. Can you explain exactly where that is and how much damage there is? And most inspectors can give you a general ballpark. Most of them give you a little higher number than it's going to cost, but they can give you a ballpark of what it's going to cost to repair something.
Well, and if it's something like small, they'll be like, yeah, this is $20 at Home Depot. And then, you know, your buyers understand like, okay, I can do that myself, that kind of thing. So